Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Board of Trustees Budget Workshop. Today's Thursday, June 22nd, 2023, and I call this meeting to order at exactly 6 o'clock p.m. Roll call. Dr. Ariel Cruz. Rudy Corona.
Present.
Mr. Frutoso Gomez.
Here.
Mr. Oscar Medrano.
Present.
Mr. Alex Reina.
Present.
Mr. Mario Silva. Ms. Teresa Trevion.
Present.
Mr. Tony Torres. Then I'm here. Okay, let's go on to number 2. There's no public comment. Let's go on to number 3, discussion regarding the proposed budget for the 23-24 school year. Ms. Trevion.
Yes, sir. So today we have Ms. Mata that is going to walk us through our budget preparation and workshop for the coming year, 23-24.
Sorry. Good evening, Board President Lopez, Board of Trustees, Ms. Servillon. We're going to go through the presentation that I've prepared. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to stop me and ask me a question. Okay, we're here for the 23-24 budget workshop. We're going to start with the budget by funds. These, as you know, we are required to approve the Child Nutrition Program, which is Fund 101, the local funds, which consist of Fund 161 Athletics, 162 Band, 163 Choir, and 199, which encompasses all our state and local funds. Then we have our debt service, which are Funds 598 and 599. For the Child Nutrition Program, we have $9,437,380 for the annual budget. And then local funds is $98,446,016. And then debt service is a combination of $8,007,771 for a total of funds of $115,891,167. So that's the proposed budget for the entire year for those said funds. This does not include, I know I keep going in and out, sorry. This does not include federal funds. That is separate, and the grants start in July or depending on the grant year. So this is just these funds. This is just a breakdown by fund that we're going to go over. It's just going to be a real quick synopsis. The Fund 101, the revenues are made up of local, state, and federal funds. Our local funds is about $300,000. That's for catering that is done by the food service program. The state funds is a state matching fund that we get from this TEA. And then the federal funds is for our National School Lunch Program. And that's $8,689,126 for a total revenues of $9,019,126. The total expenses is $9,437,380. As you can see at the bottom, it says use of fund balance of $418,254. We did receive, the next slide, you'll see at the bottom, it's a copy of a page from Exhibit J2 from the fiscal audit last year, and we have $4.7 million in fund balance in the food service program. We actually did receive a letter from TEA that because we have a high fund balance, we need to expend some of it, and Ms. Soto is actually working. We have to get approval from TEA to expend that money and explain to them how we're going to do it and bring down our fund balance for that. So she's currently working on that right now.
Ma'am,
I had a quick question. Would that help out, like for the new kitchen that they wanted to do at VMA and all that?
That's for culinary. No, that's not. No, unfortunately, no. This has to be with for food service.
Just food service
Yes.
and all?
I have a question. Is it 30,000 from state, right?
Yes.
Going to the previous?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the that TA that gives us every district a small portion for a state. They
Okay.
call it a state matching. It's very small.
Okay, I
So,
see it. Thank you.
I have a question.
okay.
On the federal fund, that's the bulk of the money that comes in for the food nutrition.
For the breakfast and lunch, yes.
So we're talking for breakfast, lunches, and all this?
Yeah, it's a breakfast, lunch, the fruit and vegetable program, which this year I think it was only 3 campuses that were part of the fresh fruit and vegetable program is what it's called, and then the supper program as well. So it's 4 different meal preps.
And let me ask you a question. Maybe Ms. Servillon, I can ask you this. Who decides on the nutritious food that these kids are getting? Because I hear a lot of stories that, a lot of that food is being thrown away. So the question I have is there something we can do about that? Is this the place that we need to discuss that?
So we have discussed it previously, actually with Ms. Soto, because we have our Greyhound chats, and the kids have brought up that some of the food is not as delicious as they are used to. And so there's an actual chart of what the do's and don'ts of what we can serve, and the vendors, no matter who the vendor is, they are actually it's the same product, And so, for example, we will have pizza on wheat crust, right? And then we'll have a very low sugar content in certain foods that the kids are saying, like I said, it's not what their palate is used to. I mean, we can explore more. I know that we sat down with Mr. Saldana, we sat down with Ms. Mata and myself, and we talked about that. And so what she did was she brought us the options, what she has to abide by for the competitive foods of minimal nutrition, et cetera, because that is what we're expected to do now.
I believe that, I personally, what I've heard, and I know my wife used to work at the school there, and she said a lot of food was going to waste, so I'm kind of curious, is there somewhere, or some, to talk to somebody, or get another vendor? I know that the money comes from the federal government, the bulk of it comes from the federal government, so I assume there are certain guidelines that we have to follow.
Correct.
Right? So, is that something we can explore?
We can continue to explore it. We did ask her to bring us in different food selections. One thing that the kids said was like, it was repetitive food. It was like the same thing. There was not enough variety. So that was something that we were also talking about, that she was still exploring. Of course, I gave options, but she said that would be out of our budget. She goes, "No, we're getting like too fancy." But I go, is there something that we can do to give them more selection?
And I think what Mr. Gomez is saying is if we can donate the food to somebody, then we can explore that. Right, Mr. Gomez?
You can't have competitive
I don't think
food.
you
You
can
can't?
donate the food from the
You
federal
can't.
government, no.
Okay.
So during the lunchtime or the breakfast time, we cannot compete with that, because of course, they're going to go for a different food, and that goes now into the food of minimal nutrition. But, I think the good thing would be to bring Araceli, Ms. Soto up, so that, we could explore that deeper.
We can do that.
Yes, ma'am, or what we can do is just look at the neighboring schools and see what kind of options they have. I know there's third-party companies here, nutritional companies, that come in here and also, set forth a menu, and there's all these programs going out there where they guarantee you funding, and they do all that.
I know that at one of the districts I worked at, what they did is they prepared different meals,
Yeah.
like the cafeteria, and then they, offered it to the students, and they had a committee, and what did they like and so forth. And then another thing that we can do is we can look at the participation numbers, as depending on what meals she's serving, where is the high participation, and maybe serve that more rotations than less, or something like that. That's something else we can do, because I know that like she does have menus, and she was, when we met, I know that she mentioned that, because I was looking at the expenditures, and I was looking, okay, if we're all elementaries, and the enrollment's this, I want an average, and I want it to be more or less the same, or at least look the same, because if not, why is one elementary getting expensed more than the other, and so forth? So she was explaining that unfortunately, like the high school has various, maybe 3 offerings, I think is what she said, versus the elementary only has 1, and that 1 offering might be pizza, and the pizza costs more for the whole elementary than the 3 offerings at the high school. Something like that's what she was explaining to us. So, but we can definitely look at, the menus, participation rates, and start there. And then, of course, if needed, form a committee from students that she can head and start doing that evaluation to see what foods they do like and
Right.
what's allowable.
Yeah, and I think that in the mornings, that's the most important breakfast of the morning. I know you all serve breakfast at all the schools, and I think that we need to make sure that we focus on that, to make sure that our kids get a good, nutritious, balanced breakfast. And I think that's what's very important for them, to be able to sit there the morning and learn. So that's kind of what I just wanted to fish out to you guys.
I know that, and I don't remember, Ms. Servion, but
The
I know that.
participation was very low for
Yes.
breakfast.
And we did discuss maybe having breakfast in the classroom, where they have the lunch boxes and they have the meals already. So when the student gets there, they just get their food, go to their desk and eat there and so forth. So we did discuss having breakfast in the classroom to increase our breakfast participation for sure.
But I mean, I think it's a good idea just to be creative, just so the parents know and the kids know that we're trying different avenues to fulfill their, their nutritional values. And if we have to go outside and figure out some other ways to do it, then we'll do it. We've done it before, and it was pretty successful before, so it's just, there's different options out there for the kids. But real quick, ma'am, can you please elaborate just a tiny bit on this, on the use of the federal funds, and why do we have an excess amount that we have to use?
Okay,
And we
so-
use it for, exactly for what capacity?
So TEA evaluates on our food service, right? And every year, the food service department is required to submit an annual financial summary to TEA and tell them this is our revenues, these are expenditures, this is what my fund balance was. They calculate what your ending is, and they use the average of the 3 months and say, okay, you know what, you have excess fund balance, try and lower it by this amount. But you need to let us know what you're going to buy because we need to approve it because you are using federal funds. So, and it's going to be, and like I said, I know that the email said something like 2.3 million. Don't quote me because I don't remember it off the top, but I know it's a little bit over 2 million. But it's because we have too much fund balance that they've,
we have to
accumulated
spend.
over the years
We have to spend it.
that we need to spend, yes.
So I guess my question is, as far as, so the board, so we can all understand, what can we spend that money on?
I know that she was looking at furniture, specifically, I think there are like 3 or 4 that she had mentioned that hadn't been, equipped for some years. So that's where she wants to start remodeling the campuses.
Okay, great,
So,
perfect.
yes.
Okay. So like tables, chairs, and all that
Yes,
good stuff, so.
that's what she was looking at.
Well, good, I think it's a good idea, so at least our staff or our principals, that, the administrators of the schools can have a little idea of what, what can,
Definitely, if you, when we do submit, if you would like to have a presentation on what was submitted, at the end of the day, when those items are purchased, because they are over 25,000, they
No, no,
will come to
yeah,
y'all. So,
right.
but if you want to know beforehand, just, we'll put it on the agenda to discuss.
but I think it's something for Araceli, I mean,
Yeah.
that's her area, but I think it's good just so that the local administrators know that they can use that in their campuses, and so we can expend that money
Okay.
that they asked us to. Okay, ma'am?
Sounds
Thank you so
good.
much, appreciate it.
Okay, did you have a question? I'm sorry. The next slide, this is again like the fund balance. The next slide is the athletics fund. And on this one, we have local revenue of 225,900. That's revenue that we gain from the ticket sales for the different sports. Then from the general fund, we transfer in 763,906. Total revenues is 989,806. Expenses is 989,806. So again, this is for the athletic fund, and anything that gets paid from the athletics, any sports. So I know that this year, when I did meet with Mr. Gomez and Alma, his secretary, we discussed, because in the past, and this applies to everybody, they didn't budget for the student insurance or the extra duty pay, which is the 6121, which is their stipends in essence, or the secretary overtime. And this year, I included part of their budget, and then I told them, remember, you need to budget this because now I'm giving you the money, because this is something that you expense, and you have to be aware of what you're expensing. You need to be aware of, where your money is at, because I don't have a holding to give you money anything without coming to the board for more money. So, and I had the same conversation with all the departments and all the principals and so forth, so.
Ma'am, I got a question. So anything like, for example, just so all of us here understand and know how this works. So I guess anything out of this here, like, for example, I know there has been some type of discussion prior, as far as, maybe turfing the softball field, for example, or the baseball field, which I think it's a major priority for us. But anyway, so how would that work into this budget, or would that have to be just an outlier that's approved in a different?
If
fund
you would
balance, I
want something in the budget to approve now, our meeting for approval for the budget, the final one, is on Tuesday. If you want to include something that you're going to use fund balance for, then you just let Ms. Arvio know, let myself know, and we will input it in here with the knowledge that the board knows that we're going to use fund balance to make that expense.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you, ma'am.
The next one is band, and this one, band does not generate any revenues. This is all money that the general fund gives band, And the transfer is $419,553, and the expenses is $553, I'm sorry. And so this one, again, is anything for the band. This one is the one that we were talking about, the tractor, buying and the middle school uniforms, which still is not in here, but it is an item that we're discussing. And either we're gonna approve it on Tuesday, or we're gonna bring it back in July and talk about the use of fund balance at that time, depending on how the board wants to handle it.
Was that just the tractor or also the trailer?
I know that the
trailer we
information that Mr. Mendoza sent me is the tractor.
Tractor.
He was looking at, because he actually, when he started doing the legwork, I believe it was maintenance or one or the other, maintenance or transportation, that actually told him that the back part isn't good anymore, that he needs the trailer, that it's not good. So we're gonna need both. So
Oh,
he was
both.
gonna
I didn't know
do
that.
more legwork on that. So that's why we haven't put it on the agenda. But that's something that we will be discussing, because I know that's one of the things that we had mentioned, was a one-time purchase item.
I have a
Again,
quick-
that would be out of fund balance.
I have a question. Why is athletics more than band? I mean, they shouldn't be the same, or that's,
So I haven't done a study,
Those are also
honestly.
participation numbers, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
We
I
have
haven't
more
done a study,
students.
but, band is just one program. Athletics has football, volleyball, basketball, softball, baseball, like all the other sports
band-
are in athletics. Band is just on
I'm
its
just
own.
asking.
Yeah.
I'm
But,
just throwing it
yeah.
out there.
No. I'm just saying that, I know that athletics has numerous programs, band is only
Can we
one.
increase the band a little bit more?
You tell me, at this point, we are going into, to balance the budget, it's gonna be use
They
of
need
fund
more
balance.
money.
So if you would want to increase something, it's gonna come out of fund balance.
Well, I think
So-
first of all, we just, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I agree, but I mean, I think
Well-
athletics also needs more, and so does everybody else. I mean, if you ask everybody, they're all gonna need more,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think we just need to be very extremely vigilant right now and just go over this process and whatever we can do to help out here and there where we can.
Since it's gonna be the beginning of the fiscal year in July, this is the
Right.
beginning, and maybe towards like the middle, reevaluate if needed.
Okay.
And look at where we're at, because I can tell you that when I met with each principal, each department head, everybody had money left over from whatever their budget was this year. They had $20,000, $30,000 left over, they had 10,000 or something. So at the point that I met with them, whether it be in May or June, everybody had money left over, which meant they still had money in their budget
I have a deal
to
for you. As
spend.
long as we get the turf, we're okay.
So-
How's that?
Ma'am, so at the end of the day, I mean, this is just a budget, but if we ever need anything, if something comes up, then we can always figure that out.
Yes.
Okay.
And just remember that at the end of last year, there was $50 million fund balance for the general fund.
Right.
That is at the discretion of the board to use. And mind you, I was looking at the how much we're gonna use for 22-23 earlier today. And I haven't finished, but you all had approved in 22-23 to use $2.6 million of fund balance. This presentation has a use of 2.8, but just looking at Fund 161, 162, 163, 199, at this point today, when I looked at it, mind you, there's other variables that I still have to look at, like the transfers out and so forth, but just those four accounts or those four funds, we're going into fund balance a little bit over $400,000 compared to the 2.6. But like I said, don't hold that to me because I still need transfers to 598, transfer to 599, transfers to general fund, anything if we, TA overpaid us. So I'm still working at those numbers, but it's a good synopsis to where, hopefully we don't go into fund balance that much. If so, you have a good cushion of $50 million to offset that.
As long as we
And
don't
one
forget the
thing
turf, ma'am. As long as we don't forget the turf, okay?
I know that when I was and I had told, I think I mentioned it to Mr. Medrano that I was going to call my previous district, because I know when I was there, we did turf for both baseball and softball, but I don't remember the dollar tag on it, so I was gonna, but this was like 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, so I'm sure it's gone up. Yeah, I think it was like, one of them was more expensive actually than the other one, but I can't remember which was which, but I'll get that information and
I have
give
a
you all a
question.
number more or
Thank you.
less.
I have a question. Did you wanna? Go ahead. Okay. My question is, This is a combination of everything under the athletic department for the
Yes.
whole San Benito School District, correct?
Yes, for the
Okay.
middle school and all
So my
that.
question is this, and every, I guess, or I hear principals, every principal or every campus has their own budget
Yes,
for that. So in that budget, I'm assuming they all have their line items as how much money is allocated for electricity, how much money for water, to pay the water, how much money for food. Is that?
okay. So for
And-
athletics, that budget is run by Coach Gomez
Okay,
and his
okay.
staff.
But my question is, every school campus or every principal has their own budget,
Yes,
and then they bring that forward, and you
Yeah.
combine it all?
yes.
But every principal has how much money is gonna be spent for
Yes.
certain things within that school district. What is
Exactly.
needed, like
Yes.
computers, desks, stuff like
So
that.
when I met with them on the state bilingual funds, and that was allocated by, this is what we generated as a
Right.
district. This is what this is what as a district we pay, which is the bilingual stipends. And I'm just gonna use that as an example, the bilingual stipends, take
Right.
that off the top. The bilingual department that we have, take that off the top. Summer school that is paid for with bilingual funds, take that off the top. Then from there, we get a number. And from that, I divided it by what number generated that amount. And then each campus has what their student allotment is, based on those ADA reports or FTE reports. And so then when I met with them, I showed them, this is what we're taking off, this is what was generated, this is what, I was very upfront about what was generated, what we're taking off the top and why. And then this is what your number at your campus shows, and this is the student allotment, so this is what you received. So that's the way we did state bilingual and state comp. And then for the local funds, I showed them, okay, this was what you had, and like I said, I did 18-19 to 22-23. 22-23 had the original revised, and then at the point that I met with them, the activity that had transpired throughout the year. So that way they could see line item by line item, and then they decide, like one example that I showed them, and I don't remember which campus it was, but the library falls under local funds. And I told them, okay, look, this campus, your librarian has been getting $5,000 for the last 5 years for library books. And then another one I think had like 8,000. I'm like, you as a principal decide if that's, because at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you I'm going to cut 10%. So you as a principal decide if that's sufficient funds for library books, or you want to reduce it a little bit. I can't tell you because I don't know the needs of your campus. I can tell you this is your allotment, this is what you've expensed it on, and then you as a principal decide, where you need it. And then, of course, they always have the option, and I did tell them, if they need to transfer funds, either if it's within the same function, they just transfer it within Skyward budget amendment. If it needs board approval, because it's going from function to function, then, submit it to us in a timely manner, and we'll present it to the board. So they already know that as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am. I know that under the federal funds, they always have money, extra money, let's put it that way. And I remember that under the federal funds, they used to help, they used to help other departments, like the police department with the K-9 unit, and they still do that, or?
I know that, like, right now, the only thing that, if they apply for a grant, like I know Chief Sosa applied for one, and that's where we're doing the panic buttons. But currently, everything is funded from local funds for the security department.
Okay.
But yes, but if it's allowable that we can do something for a different department, then
Yes.
yes, we do use federal funds primarily first. That's what I told the principals also, spend your federal funds first, then your state, then your local. So that's the way we want to spend our monies.
Thank you.
I think that with Title IV is what he's talking about, when we support our police department through Title IV. But those allocations are generated by our low socioeconomic percentage. And then that's also distributed to the campus, all our titles, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. All the title programs are distributed to campus for expenditures to support students and staff based on per pupil allocation as well.
Yes.
And that's the way we do it. We do a per pupil allocation. In the case of federal, we do the per pupil allocation based on the low socioeconomic percentage. Okay? But that's not in this budget. Just,
Okay, Fund 163 is choir, and that again does not generate funds. This is a transfer from the general fund in the amount of $147,675, and the expenditures are the exact same thing. Again, this is for choir program. And you can see it's smaller than the bandwidth. So, any questions on choir? Okay. Fund 199, this is a big one. This is the one that, this is where the money's at. So our revenues is $96,142,986. And this, of course, is made up of local funds, which are our tax revenue, our interest in our investments, and of course, our funds from TEA for our foundation allotment. Then we have the expenses, which is $96,888,982. And then I added the 1.2 million that, remember I've been telling you that TA is going to send us 1.2 million because of the amendment that we did for the bonds that were passed for A and B, and they still owe it to us. I know that I had Chris, my director of accounting, reach out to Amanda, which works over at TASBO, to find out, like, okay, we have an estimate, or is going to be with our allotment for 23-24, and can I, knowing I'm going to receive this, can I already input it into my budget so I don't have to transfer that out from general fund? But right now, the way it stands, I did include the 1.6, but if TA sends us that money, that 1.6 will become 400,000. So I just wanted to mention that. And that 1.6 is part of that transfer out, the 3.269881. So of course, that transfer out again, 161, 162, 163, 598, which is our LEDs, and we'll go over that one right now, and then 599, our bond payments. So then the use of fund bonds would be $2.8 million, $2,815,877. Again, hopefully, one thing I was looking at that hopefully we'll work on next year is our attendance rate. Our average attendance rate for 22-23 was 91%, a little bit over. So hopefully we can at least get it up to 93, 94. I know it's hard at the high school level, but it shouldn't be as hard at the elementary. So hopefully that's something we can target for next year, and hopefully that'll bring in more revenue and help us with the use of fund balance as well. So
I think it's also important to note, and I don't know if you want to delineate, but last year when we adopted the budget, we said we were going to use fund balance. We were going to use 2.6 million. Do you want to walk us through that? Because now we're collapsing the budget, right? And so we projected to use 2.6 million, but we're at about 400,000.
Yeah.
So we're not dipping into the fund balance like we thought we were going to. So the whole thing for us to do is, okay, we want to make sure that our expenditures are up here and we're kind of keeping our revenues here. But at the end, when you start collapsing your budget together, then the hope is we increase ADA, we increase enrollment, but even if we don't, we're looking at our current numbers. And so right now, we're projecting a 2.8 million, but then again, last year we projected a 2.6 use, and we're not even $500,000 so far dipping into fund balance. I don't know if there's anything I forgot.
No, I had mentioned it a little bit a while ago, so now I think any questions on that?
So I think what we need to do, I think you brought up a real good point, ma'am, as far as the ADA is concerned. I mean, as far as the attendance, I think it's something strategically that we really need to focus on, especially with, the expenditures that are coming forth. We want to do a lot of great things in the district. We need the kids to come to school. So I think we really need to focus on that. I'm more than sure Ms. Servillon has a plan. And and maybe one of these days we can talk about that at a later time. But I think that number needs to go up. I don't know how feasible that is, but I don't know what the normal rate is. But
Normally, average is like 94, 95%, actually.
so we're below
And
the-
I know that back in the heyday, I'm going to say that, for state comp, actually mandated that we had a 96% attendance rate for state comp funds. Now it's not required, but way back when, it was that if they required districts to have a 96% attendance rate, because if not, it would affect, of course, their learning and so forth. So that would be one of the things that the district would be measured on. Mind you, this is years and years ago.
Right.
But, so I always got used to, hey, 96, right? But for me, 95% is feasible. Hopefully we can get there, because like I said, we were at 91 point something. And so, I'm sorry?
But
like 91.30 or 91.03, something like that. That 3 is right there. So hold on, I think I wrote it in the 91.35. I knew I had written it down. So mind you, that's the first through fifth, 6 weeks only. I didn't do six weeks, but because I had already run this, and I just pulled it up real quick. So the first through the fifth 6 weeks was 91.35% average for the entire district. Now, I know that at the end of the year, some of the principals started rewarding the students, like with either pizza or ice cream if they attended school and so forth. I know at one of my districts that I was at, we had a campus incentive. So if you made like this percentage per 6 weeks, we gave you, the district, and we budgeted into our budget, $5 per student. So that way, at the end of each 6 weeks, we give you that money only if you met the criteria, and then were expected to do something at the end of 6 weeks to reward the students at that time. So we had that program at my camp, at one of my previous districts, because that was a way for us to increase attendance. So there's different options that can be done to, students at the end of the day want to be rewarded.
right.
And if
Yeah,
they
I
are
think-
rewarded,
Right.
By implementing that at that other campus that you were talking about, how much of a percentage did it increase though?
I don't remember this years ago, I'm sorry, no. I think when I was there, we only did it when we started, I only stayed there like for maybe 2 years more or something. So I didn't see the full effects, and I don't even know if they're still doing it. But we did do it, and I know that, the campuses actually, it did increase because, we budgeted, and those that actually met it, mind you, it was 3 campuses, one per grade span, elementary, middle school, high school. But, the kids like the benefit of having that reward.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm more sure once the administrative team gets together and we talk about this and talk about all that, I'm more sure they'll come up with a plan that'll increase increase that attendance. Okay, ma'am, thank you, appreciate it.
so recently, we were seeing that our attendance was low right before a holiday. Low. And so, it was that simple where we rewarded them with ice cream, and I think we gave them like $3.50 per child. So then we saw on that day before the holiday, increase in enrollment, because they knew they were going to get ice cream. So then, I also saw the desensitization, I guess, of rewards, because at first we were giving them like bikes and TVs and, these ear pods, and the kids were kind of like, like, we've already have one of those, or like they didn't want it anymore, right, and stuff. So it's like more about what's truly connected, and I think the immediate reward is more important than like, I'm gonna wait 9 weeks, before I get something, or the end of the year, or whatever. But yes, so I know that the ice cream really worked for elementary and even secondary. I couldn't believe secondary really wanted the ice cream as well. So,
Maybe we can have food trucks for the high school.
yes, like snow cones. Okay, so continuing,
So again, this is just to show you the fund balance in the general fund. You can see unassigned fund balance at the end of June. Last year was $50,193,260, so just to let you know. The next one is Fund 598, which is the LED lights, if you remember the project that was here. And the transfer in from general fund is $269,749. And that is our our payment for the LED lights. If you can see on the next slide, I put out the amortization schedule. Our last payment is on March 27th, 2029. So we still have a few more years to go. So any questions on that? The next one is our Fund 599, which is our debt service. Again, this is where we pay our bond payments from. Local fund is $3,785,127, which is of course our taxes. State revenues is the EDA and IFA funding that we get from TEA for our bonds, and that's $2,283,897. Again, this is a transfer in from the general fund, which is the $1.6 million that I mentioned. But again, once we receive, hopefully, the 1.2, that would become $468,000. For total revenues of $7,738,022, and the expenses is $7,738,022. The next page, you can see the schedule. You can see what bonds we pay and how much per year, and you can see all the way to 2049. So we have quite a ways to go on that one. So any questions on the bond payments? The next slide is just, again, a copy of the schedule from the audit that shows that the INS fund had 42,000 in fund balance. So, any questions? So the next slide is the budget by object code, and this again is just overall, all funds, which is again the funds that we're discussing now, which is 101, 161, 162, 163, and 199. And payroll, which is 6,100, is our biggest, of course, expense at the amount of 88,889,556 for a 77% of the budget. The next one is contracted services, and that is for any service that you have to get repaired, anything for the light expenses, the legal fees, all that goes in there, and that's 3 million.
Is there any way of getting like a breakdown on that one?
Yes, we can. So for the next meeting, I'll bring it for you. The total expense on that is 3,806,757, which is 3%. The supplies is 9,865,362, which is 9%. Travel and miscellaneous is 4,227,570, which is 4%. And then the bond lease is 8,515,421, which is 7% of the budget. And then capital outlay is 586,500, which is 1%. Total amount for all funds again is $115,891,167. So any questions? Okay, the local funds is the next one. Again, this is Fund 199, 161, 162, and 163. This one, if you look at it, payroll is 85,619,662 for a percentage of funds of 87%, I'm sorry. And then contracted services is 3.5 million, percentage 4%. Supplies is 4,462,820, 5%. Travel and miscellaneous, 4,192,137, which is 4%. Bond and leases is 507,650, which is 1%. And then capital outlay is 136,500. That bond and leases, that stadium lease that you all have, okay? And any questions on that? The next one is, and this one you can barely see, but this is by function, and this is all funds, and so we are looking at function 11. As you can see, I can go through it, or you can just review it, and I'll just give you the total again. If you look at the very bottom of it, it's 115,891,167. The biggest, of course, is our instruction, which is function 11. And that's 56,814,762, and of course that has all our teachers' salaries, our instructional aides, and so forth, and of course the supplies and the computers for our students and so forth. So, any questions? And again, if you want to talk about any function in particular, just let me know, and I'll go in there and look at it. The local funds, again, by function, and again the biggest one is instruction, which is 56,814,762. Followed by plans and maintenance, which is our maintenance department, and that's 10,484,540. So for the local funds, it's 98,446,016.
I have a question. On community service, what does that mean, community service? 61.
61, that is our community liaisons that we have for like the FACE program, the FACE department. That's what that is. Yes, and we pay 50% from Title I of their salaries and 50% from state comp.
And one quick question, I think, before we, I think it's pretty much it. One quick question, what, you don't have to answer it now, but what is the probability of maybe a potential raise for our staff? I know there's been talk about all different kinds of things, and I don't want to mention just one certain area because all our staff is important. So, I mean, is it something that, we can talk about this at a later time, but can we just please entertain something? And then we can discuss it and see if it's feasible for us or not?
Definitely. I know that when we met last time, we were discussing 2%.
Okay,
So I know that's what was given last year. We all want us to look at different numbers. Let me set you know, and that way we can run numbers for y'all. And then y'all have better idea of what the cost will be. And that way,
I got you, okay.
No, but we had already started running
Okay,
the
I
numbers
got
at
it. Yes, we had already-
2%.
Okay. Okay,
so.
okay.
The next slide is just a copy of the public notice that was placed in the newspaper. So about our meeting next week. Okay? Any
So just
questions?
to be clear, ma'am, it's 2% across the board, right, for everyone? Or
Yes,
it's-
that's what we were looking at. That's the
Okay,
proposal
okay.
that we were looking at,
Just
the
to be
number.
clear, okay.
And
Thank you.
from the midpoint.
And for midpoint, yes, for midpoint.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Ma'am, thank you so much for the presentation, greatly
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Mata, appreciate it.
Okay, let's go on to 4.1, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
I got a motion by Mr. Medrano. Can I have a second? I got a second by Mr. Corona. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Motion carries. We adjourn this meeting at 6:40 PM. Thank you.